Now, this is the tale of the Esperance Witch. And unfortunately, like most stories of witchcraft in the West, it shows how cruel society can be to women, especially if those women don't fit in. Also, it shows us that Halloween truly is the lightest time of the year because all you have to do is be afraid of monsters and ghosts and you can forget about the real predators. The people, the mobs, the scapegoating, the confusion, the tribalism. I think I will dress as tribalism this Halloween because that's really the scariest costume. Now, this is a story about a single woman, a widowed woman, who lived on the outskirts of town. She spoke French and the villagers spoke English. The town had some bad luck, and the simple and superstitious town folks blamed that woman. In this video, we will cover that woman, known as the Esperance Witch in local folklore, sometimes known as the Grenadier Woman. What was her story? What happened to her? And how does it fit in to the history of that area and the twisted worldview that allowed this horrible injustice to happen? The real villain in this story is the mob and mass hysteria. Mass hysteria. Framed as justice. Great. Now, we have covered witch trials in Europe and Massachusetts. This one happened in New York, close to Albany. It's above New York City, so in your mind. Now, in this particular article, it's called Season of the Witch, Witchcraft Trials in New York State. And this is by Lisa LaMonica. It's from 2022. And this article details this thinking about the witchcraft and witch trials in New York. New York was largely spared from the witch hysteria from the English colonies. And a lot of what did happen in New York was New England runoff. And that's because New York was largely settled by the Dutch, who didn't do that witchcraft stuff anymore, at least not in the colonies, as the English continued to do. Now, the Esperance Witch takes place in an English-speaking village called Esperance, but even this story is a real outlier because it happened in the early 1800s. One source says 1820 to 1824, which is way too late for witch hysteria. Like, y'all should have been known that witch trials were goofy and been looking into a scientific cause for your village's maladies instead of attacking this poor widow. To put this in perspective, the Salem witch trials happened in the 1690s, and they were almost immediately a source of great shame for Salem, for that community. It even helped push out the government that permitted them. So the people everybody knew they shouldn't be messing with witch hysteria by this point. They made it illegal in England in the early 1700s, and the colonies followed suit. By 1820, witchcraft was not a crime in New York. By 1820, it was the United States of America. Now, the first-hand accounts that I have been able to find, they are scarce. Some seem to be the life memories of elderly people of what happened in their youth, it's just still a first-hand account, but you'll see. And these stories have become local folklore, and they seem to have some basis in historical reality, although many people have surely embellished. So if you go to this town, who knows what you're actually going to hear? It's like a game of telephone at this point. Yes, this stuff will make you mad. This is why I only do witch trial videos on Halloween, because they are so infuriating. There really is no justice in this world. This is from The Fate of the Esperance Witch, History of a Local Legend. This was originally printed in the Mountain Eagle. Now, remember, firsthand accounts are memories that are passed down. They're not records like we have in Salem. We don't have the trial records here. It says, during the Napoleonic Wars, a French family wandered to the west in search of a place to settle and call home. They did not know English. The man, a French soldier and the father of 2 sons, passed away. Now a widow, the woman lived frugally in a home on the edge of Esperance. Townsfolk, paranoid about her not knowing any of their language, were weary of her. Okay, let's just take a break here. Townspeople, this is French. This is French. You could have literally made any effort whatsoever to understand her. Half of the words are the same. These are the same people who will call themselves Christian, but then they go and they shun this poor widow and her 2 boys. Okay. To put this in perspective, how goofy this actually is, the village is named Esperance, which means hope in French. Maybe that is why this French couple actually settled there, because it means hope in French. Also, start from there. You at least know one word in common. Now, the Cambridge Sentinel from 1912 has this story, and it's closer to the incident, but it's still 90 years later. It recounts what the elders say because, like I said, the firsthand accounts are scarce. And this is supposedly from this elder who's telling his story. Left alone, the widowed woman lived in a little house on the outskirts of the village, planting her garden, raising her chickens, and managing in her frugal French way to live. Perhaps she went to the town, gaunt and hungry, to pick up some odd work or to ask for some relief. At any rate, she could not talk English and was mysterious. They called her the Grenadier Woman, and before long, some misfortune was laid to her, so that the townsfolk came to look upon her as a witch. Now, this repeats another theme from the Massachusetts witch trials, the Salem witch trials. Check out that video. That theme is guilt. Now, this journalist is spitballing, but it's feasible that the widow did go into town looking for community or economic relief. Remember, she had 2 boys and it's really cold up there in the winter. She probably needed help. Now, in Massachusetts, these women begging actually made them feel guilty. And I know times were hard, but maybe they didn't help as much as their conscience says that they should have. And it made them want to get rid of the thing that was causing them guilt. Now, we went over this in the Salem videos a few years back. You're like, it's not me that's greedy. It's the old woman who's a witch. So I shouldn't feel any guilt. I should project my guilt on her. This is the literal psychological trick of scapegoating. Now, a guilty conscience will actually lash out. So that is a theory that historians have had as to why those townspeople attacked this poor woman and why townspeople in general attacked women who needed help. They say this woman is the problem. Let's scapegoat them and not, hey, maybe I should do the Christian thing and help this poor widow, which I am mandated to do in the Bible. All right. Back to the Mountain Eagle. Once an epidemic of sickly animals in children began, Esperance townspeople accused the woman of being a witch. Many tales and rumors spread. One claimed she removed her apron, laid it across the river, and vaulted across, coming up dry on the other side. This rumor led to her getting the nickname the Grenadier Woman. Bunch of haters. If this woman is able to cross the river with any kind of grace, now she's a witch. Not that maybe you could hit the gym, Goody Thomas, but no, it's this woman's fault. Hating ass locals. Quote me on that. Hating ass townspeople. Sickly, dying livestock, children, and crops, as well as cattle drying up, storms, and a man called Mr. McDuffel dying were all blamed on the so-called witch. One person claimed that the widow rang out a rag of milk right as a cow came up dry at a neighboring farm. Mr. McDuffel suffered tremendous injuries to his leg after a tree fell on him, leading to him needing an amputation before passing away from an infection. Okay, let's take a break here. Complete act of chance, but people are attacking her for being a witch. Meanwhile, other people in the United States and Europe, they're studying calculus and mechanics. See, we think of 1820 as old-timey, but this is like if we went on a witch hunt now. Keep in mind, the photograph was invented in 1826, so this is way, way too late for this nonsense. But even now, most people are scientifically illiterate, and they give way too much credence to myths, to folklore, to superstition. We talked about Peter Thiel, this tech oligarch who is obsessed with the Antichrist, a mythical figure from almost 2,000 years ago. Like, what? I'd like to say that it's the uneducated, unwashed masses that are falling for this stuff, but apparently this sickness is in all of us. Okay, so let's talk about scapegoating. We touched on this briefly in the Peter Thiel video a few weeks back, but scapegoating is where a group of people, they project all of their ills, all of their sin on one member, and together they flock to and attack this member. And it comes from a time where there was this ritual where they physically put all of the tribe's sin on a literal goat and drove it out like some dumb ape kind of ish. Now, as we discussed, Christianity was supposed to deliver us from this absolutely brain dead way of thinking, because in Christianity, Christ is the scapegoat. He is the scapegoat, but he is also the hero. look what this evil mob did to our king. And Christians are supposed to never do that again. But did they? No, as we have discussed with the witch trials. All right. The article continues. Despite the poor healthcare in the period, fingers were still pointed toward the widowed woman. Settlers also claimed a farm's missing cattle appeared on the witch's property. I don't believe that is true, but you don't need witchcraft to steal cattle. That's like me saying, my catalytic converter is missing, it must be a witch. So the woman was placed on trial, where it was claimed she was absent and received a guilty verdict. As we have pointed out earlier in this video, no, she wasn't placed on trial because witchcraft was not a crime in New York in 1820. Could it have been an informal trial, aka a lynch mob? Was it a lynch mob? Perhaps, but there's no record of it. Okay, the article continues. In a somber conclave, the townsfolk voted for her death. A man offered up a silver spoon from the east, which was melted down into a bullet by a silversmith. So, conspiracy, a lot of people did this. Men chosen for the task peered through her window, saw her cooking with the 2 children playing on the floor beside her, and fired. The widow was buried with a stake driven through her head, in theory, to hold her down. Just like they've been holding women down forever and ever. So these evil men, according to the sources, did this in front of her 2 children as part of their informal justice system. Heavy sarcasm on the justice part. They did it in front of these kids who had already lost their father. That is another trend from the New England witch trials and a trend in life, that women who are attacked often don't have grown sons to defend them. Now, according to this particular source, these kids were playing, so they were too small to defend their mother. The article tells what happened to the boys. The sons of the soldier and widow survived into adulthood. One lived to 90, said to have recounted the tale of his mother dying with the same intense vividness as he did in his childhood many years earlier. Well, that's trauma. These people are monsters. There's no other way to describe them. This mob is monsters. If she came back every Halloween to haunt this town, I wouldn't even be mad at her. In fact, if I'm watching this horror movie, I am cheering for the witch. I'll even help. What do you need, girl? Eye of Newt? Say no more. I got you. I got Eye of Newt for you. Puppy dog tails? There you go. Get him. Anyway, the Cambridge Sentinel says this about one of the boys. One of the boys who remembered the occurrence lived to be past 90 years of age and told it to the last with all the vividness of youth, pointing out where her cabin stood and often visiting the tree. This man was appointed postmaster by Andrew Jackson and removed by Grover Cleveland in 1885. I cannot find his name. I went looking. He's not the postmaster general. He was farther down. I can't find the name. Jackson was president from 1829 to 1837. Grover Cleveland was president from 1885 to 1889, and then again from 1893 to 1897, but this happened in his first term, as it says, 1885. They say the man lived to be over 90, so let's do some math, which means he served about 50 years at his job in the post office. I hope he had children. I hope he was happy. He was a kid when this happened to his mom. So let's say he was born in 1815, maybe, give or take, and died around 1905, thereabouts. I thought I hated people before this story, but stuff like this just reminds me that I don't hate people enough. I really don't. So who could have done something like this? This is what I could find. It's from a book from 1845 called The History of Schoharie County and the Border Wars of New York. And this is by a man named Jeffrey Root Sims. So this is about 20 years after the fact, give or take. I have before observed that witchcraft was believed in by some of the Schoharie people many years ago. A man by the name of Rector once shot with impunity an old woman living on the bank of the Schoharie opposite the present village of Esperance, said to have been bewitched. She was shot through a window of her own house. Cattle were sometimes killed for the same supposed malady and burned up. So Sims does not say that there was a trial, but he seems to imply that this individual rector took it upon himself to kill this poor widow, this, from the other story's mother, and that he got away with it. Also, I have to debate the use of the term old woman. I know that back in the day, anyone over 30 was considered an old woman, but if she had 2 kids, as the folklore says, playing next to her, she really couldn't have been that old. Anyway. Sims then goes on to tell the story of a doctor, and this is unrelated to the incident, to the specific event, but it kind of goes into the mentality of the witch hunting, the witch combating that was practiced in the area. He says, I have spoken of old Dr. Moulter as a believer in witchcraft. He is said to have had repeated battles with witches, and on one occasion to have encountered 7 at once at a small brook near the corner of the roads in the north part of Schoharie village, and retreated until he placed his back against the brick church when he overpowered them. Really? Of all the things that never happened, this never happened the most. One anecdote more of the old doctor. He pretended he could drive rats from one house to another and was often hired by the superstitious, by whom he was very liberally paid to drive rats from their dwellings to those of their neighbors, with whom they were not on good terms. All right, I just gotta be real with you. If you're the one driving rats to somebody else's home, from your home to somebody else's home, you're the problem, okay? Hey, you're the problem. It's you, Goody Thomas. Fucking hater. Anyway, the silly doctrine of witchcraft has fled the Schoharie Valley, never more to enter it. So that's good. It's a little late, but that's good. They had abandoned their belief in witchcraft by 1845, and they do seem ashamed of their actions. Okay, I'm still mad about it, but I said the prayer and I am moving on. Now, there is now a plaque dedicated to her, and it reads, lived near here in the 1800s, French settler accused of witchcraft by New England settlers, killed by silver bullet shot through her window. I love how they're being like, oh, it's New England. New England did it, not New York, New England. Also, there is a song by Mike Holt, which is unlisted. I have reached out to him and asked about this song, but I haven't heard back. When I do hear back, I will link that below. So please check in the description for that. Maybe I've heard about it by now. Anyway, that is the story of the Esperance Witch as we know it. It's really the story of an angry mob of men who felt justified in killing a widow in front of her children for beliefs they should have known were nonsense. Basically, it's the story of humanity. And isn't that nice? I mean, is this a Halloween episode or is this a Christmas episode? Because that's just so sweet and unifying. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Pour a flute of Prosecco on the sidewalk for our fallen queen, the Esperance Witch, or the Grenadier Woman.